I'm trying to be the one-hitter quitter, baby.
Yeah, we're good.
Welcome to Profits in Process. I'm your host, Ryan Grant, and today's episode is juicy. Now, today's dope because I get a chance to literally sit with my brother and ask him questions that I don't even know. Even though I do feel like I know a lot about this young man and have a different perspective than most people do, there are things that I'm curious about as well in regards to his process and how he views himself and what he does. So I'm excited for everybody to be a part of this. On that note, I'd like to introduce Hugo McCloud, who is a man that I met at a point where it was a phase change for me, and my brother as well, I think, where it was refreshing to be able to see somebody who was as similar to me and my brother simultaneously in different ways. And whether it be the awkwardness, the intensity, the creativity, all across the board, really. And I think immediately we just kind of saw like, oh yeah, we know what this is. I appreciate this man and what he brings to the world and how he's grown and watching him develop. So it's dope to be able to sit with you, Hugo.
Right on. I'm here.
We're going to try something new. I came up with this idea, and I want to try something new in regards to how we start off this, and it's around music. You have any quick stories about memories of your parents playing music in the house?
I mean, I didn't grow up with my father, but for my very early childhood, I do have memories and stuff like that. My mom and my dad kind of met through art and through music, and primarily jazz.
Yeah.
And actually had a jazz club called Mapinzi that they started together in Berkeley, California. And I do have slight, like those very faint memories of kind of like the loft above the jazz club. But I grew up in a jazz influenced family. Records, hundreds of records. I mean, I guess there was no any other. I guess maybe cassettes, but records. And I grew up in that jazz era of like kind of like the jazz greats of what you would call the jazz greats. So like my take was like, Coltrane, Miles, Ellington, just kind of like that whole group of Herbie Hancock, and was like heavily influenced in that throughout my life. And I think as well, like, you're influenced in that because it's also kind of relates to your family, your mother, your father, and trying to find connection with that. Yeah, then I also found myself kind of slipping away from listening to jazz actually after college, after I dropped out of college and started doing my arts. And I think I removed myself from jazz because I was also like removing myself from, I don't want to say my parents, but I think my father in a way. And kind of just started gravitating towards other music and other things where jazz was no longer like the primary.
That makes sense.
Sound that I was looking for.
That's kind of like a coming of age, almost like, yo, I gotta like connect to my own thing. If we have such a reference point for like what the music was played in your household. Mm-hmm. It's like, all right, I gotta connect to something else. I was fortunate because we listened to everything, and at some point in time, mom was like, yo, play something else. So we, Uncle Rick, Sharon, they were all playing a whole different types of stuff, and then Kim was listening to all types of everything. So we really did have a wide variety.
I remember my first hip hop tape that I bought was Public Enemy. And I remember my grandfather, who was from Austria, bought it for me. I was with my sister as well.
He bought it for you?
We were in Carmel.
Okay.
So if you know anything about California, like Carmel is like a very affluent area. And it was a Tower Records. And I remember buying Public Enemy, and my sister, who was like, "This is evil music. Like, you shouldn't buy this," and all this stuff. And I think like that's when I started listening to like hip hop and changing and that. But that was like young. That was even before college. All of that. That was like probably like
the first album I bought was Tupac, Strictly for My Niggas.
Yeah,
and I used to play it on my Fisher Price cassette tape. Okay. That and a Tribe Called Quest. Yeah. That changed it. Yeah, it did. I love Tupac early.
Music has always been a part of, not to use that word because it's part of the title of the show, but part of my process.
Yeah.
Whether it's being listened to or not listened to, in creating, in exercise and everything. Much more in a space of doing something. I very rarely listen to music when I'm relaxing. So I listen to music to put me in some type of focus or mind state.
It helps put you into some sort of zone or some sort of place.
Yeah, or not. As of late, I found myself, like especially with training and running and stuff like that and those type of things, I found myself listening to more of podcasts and people talking, because it allows me not to have ups and downs from the hype of the music.
Like methodical?
Or the change, and as well allows me to focus on my breathing.
Right.
Rather than like when I'm working, unless it's late at night, if I'm painting late at night, for some reason, late at night is when I can actually listen to hip hop.
Yeah.
Hip hop. I can actually listen to rap.
Yeah.
But it's usually like some real hood stuff, like some drill,
like trap, shit.
Drill, but something kind of heavy in that sense. But during the daytime, I don't listen to hip hop. I don't listen to actually music that I understand. And I was talking to somebody about this recently. Like, I listen to a lot of foreign music, and I don't know what this is from. I think like as a creative, you're using both positive and negative experiences and situations that are in your life, and all of it is like coming together to create. But I think a lot of times when I'm listening to music in the studio, especially during the daytime, I'm listening to a lot of foreign music. And I think because I like the idea of listening to things that I don't understand, so that I'm actually in my own thoughts. But there's something, and I think as well by listening to foreign music, and it could be anything from like Arabic, it could be Latin,
I've heard
African, it could be all types of different cultures. But I think as well, there's an idea of listening to something that I don't understand, but I also, because I've traveled a lot, it transports me to visuals of textures and
of other cultures
and like spaces, even down to like the way the air looks or the sky looks in these different places. And I think for whatever reason, that allows me to kind of go into an imaginary state in the sense of like what I'm creating, because I'm then creating, I think creating is like I've never really created fully what is in my head.
Yeah.
Right? You're always creating something, and you get a portion of what you were trying to create, but it usually comes out as something else. Right? So like the big vision and dream and excitement of a space of inspiration usually never fully translates into the production of your work. Right? So like a part of it comes, and then you're and I think like that's what creativity is like you're continually searching for this thing that you it's a weird, I've never known how to like fully articulate it, but it's like this idea of creating something in your head that you see in your head, but you can't like articulate it or even in a way create it. as a tangible item. Like it's never really gonna
like the expression never translates fully for it,
right,
to the idea.
I'm continually shifting. If you look at my practice, my work, my life, like I'm continually shifting creative processes, right? And right now I'm painting, but I think there's part of me as a creator, and I think this is general, but I'll just keep it on me. But like, there's everything is kind of like broken up into different areas, and part of it is ego, part of it is wanting to be acknowledged, part of it, all those type of things, right? But then for me, a lot of it is I don't care about a lot of that stuff, and I do because you're human and you want people to acknowledge what you're doing, but I don't care about it enough where it's going to dictate the direction of my drive and my like creative process. So at the same time, and this is why it's like this continual juggling of back and forth, but at the same time, then you're in the market and it's a business and it's all these other things, right? But then there's a creative side. And I try to, as long as I'm in the studio, is I'm trying to create something that has captured my attention, and then translating it in however I see fit through the different materials that I use. At the same time, I'm conscious over the idea that everything that I'm creating right now is just stepping stones to get to where I'm actually trying to get, where I do not actually even know what that is. If that makes sense.
Of course it does.
There's something that I know that what I'm creating right now, where I can actually look at it and be like, this is meaningless. But I have to go through this process and create these things in order to get to this thing that is actually like the purpose of where I'm supposed to be. And maybe I also look at it like maybe I'll never get to that purpose. Maybe I'll never achieve that. But at the same time, I think that's what drives me continually to try to like search, correct, change, adapt, like continually try to push it and grow and create new things. So like even, like what I'm creating right now, like how I've shifted from abstraction into figuration, it's like I can look at it and step outside of myself and be like, what am I even doing? Like, how did this even like happen? What am I doing? Like, and all of that. But I think like I have to go through these different phases. And fortunately, I've been blessed where the audience have moved with me and supported me in it to allow me to continue to move forward it.
Tricky thing sometimes,
but I also know like this is not where I'm going to end up, or like the direct. This is not the end point.
You said something that I want to give attention to. You said when something catches my attention, and are you intentionally putting yourself in spaces to be inspired to have that, or is it one of those things where it's like, what, I'm just kind of like pulling from internally where I'm at, externally where I'm at, just my world? Because I think that speaks to another question I have in regards to when you create your art, what the intention is.
I'm in a changing space of life right now, of where I see myself. Like I'm 43, and like I look at all the things that I've done. I grew up in a creative household. Like my father was a sculptor. That's what he did for a living. My mom was a designer, landscape designer, had stores. They had a jazz club. Grew up without a TV, like no TV in the house. Go in the garage and make stuff. Here's some tools. Build a fort in the back.
Good living.
Yeah, tell mom I'm moving out as a kid because I got in a fight and moving to the backyard, start building a fort, barbecuing, come in the house to grab. I remember my mom, I left house one day and I was like, I'm leaving. And I went to the backyard, started building I was like, I'm moving to the backyard. I'm moving out of this house. And I started building a house in the backyard. And I built a floor and I built 2 walls and I got tired. The sun was going down. I'm dead serious. It was probably like a quarter of this room. Yeah. That's the footprint that I was making. Because my aunt, my mom's sister, she put me in this at Sequoia High School in this construction. And I mean, when I think about it now, I must have been like 13, but put me in like a construction, like Saturday course,
Word.
how to like build stuff. I remember her looking at me through the kitchen window while she was washing dishes. And I remember having to go in and grab food from the refrigerator, pasta, and then came outside, dug a hole in the ground, and made pasta. And now I think about it, and I'm going to get to the question, but now I think about it as an older person, how funny that must have been to
Absolutely,
like a parent seeing their kid like making pasta out in the I took the grill
frustrated doing it.
Yeah, frustrated thinking, and then it got too dark, and then I finally came back in. But I thought I was convinced in my head that I was definitely living back there. Like that was it. I was out of the house.
It's not just. It's actually. It's hilarious when you watch your children, but it's also dope, and it's a really beautiful thing to see that not child, it's like just the human where it's like, nah, I'm about to do this. And then they realize whatever obstacles come into play, like, oh, I'm tired, or ooh, how to adjust. You know, you see those types, it's like, you're starting to see like individual skills and stuff like that. It's like, oh, these are the type of things that inspire them. Nah, they're frustrated, so what are they gonna do with that frustration?
Right.
What are they gonna do? And then they start to realize, you know, and this is the things of the world. Reality starts to set in certain aspects, like, oh, I didn't take everything into account. I do need some of this.
I look at my life and I see all the different things over the course of time that I've invested huge amounts of creative time, physical energy building, whether it was when I dropped out of school, you know, going into design and fabrication, I think about it. I've been running creative or art studios and for 23 years now, more than half of my life. I've been holding down studios and having a store and building out a store. And like, you know, we had a cafe together. So like the energy that I exerted in that, in the sense of building out and designing and all that stuff, like I've seen myself develop these things countless times and putting creative energy into something that sparked from an idea and from like an idea, but also, which I look at as a blessing, that God gave me, is that like a willingness to like pursue and endure, because I look at inspiration as a less than 1% tool that is used for the creative process. Like inspiration to me, I try not to actually even use inspiration, because the reality is like everybody's inspired. But the reality is that once you start anything creative, to me, a lot of the inspiration is gone. Because once you start the creative process that is sparked from the inspiration, you're problem solving. And once you're problem solving to create whatever it is that you're inspired, that's when you have to put your head down and deal with those difficulties of problem solving. And that's where a lot of people fall off. So
it's easier to deter an inspiration the moment you start it.
Once you start it and you see like, okay, now it's going to take, because when you're inspired, you kind of see the end goal right away. You're like, this is where I'm trying to get. This is what I'm trying to create. It's the same thing like when I'm making paintings, like I've never really created exactly what's in my head. So like once I finish that painting and I put it up on the wall, I'm not, like there's always this kind of space of like, it's good, but like it's not what I'm trying to create. Then you have to put your head down and do it again, because you're still trying to get to that place that the inspiration was like sparked, right? Mm-hmm. Like this thing, and you didn't get there. So you have to put your head down and go through the pain and everything like that, like to try to like get to that point. I look at like all the things that I've done and created, a lot of things that worked, a lot of things that could have worked, a lot of things that did not work, but that also required huge amounts of like physical, mental, putting your head down work. Now, like I'm also coming into a space where I was thinking about this the other day where like, what is actually wisdom? Like wisdom is like of how to do things in a sense. Like I just moved to LA off of this whole situation.
Yeah.
And how I put that studio together in 4 weeks was only able to happen from literally all my past experiences.
Oh, absolutely.
As well as being able to look at it and be like, what do I need? What do I don't need? My experiences, the understanding of how to kind of put all these puzzle pieces together, which is wisdom. But like,
it's based upon the action. I think that's how I reference wisdom. Wisdom is in the actual action. You gain wisdom through the action of doing and doing and doing. It. And then you can speak on, it's like, no, okay, we clean this up next time or whatever it may be. And when you know, all the work that you talk about, those years of holding the studios down, actually giving energy to all these projects and not just coming up with all these ideas, actualizing them and however they came to fruition or whatever it may be, that amount of energy in work, what do you think it's giving you?
I think like all of those experiences are now showing me how to create from a different space, from a space of like a little bit more, not really in a matter of being reserved, but kind of calculating what is important and what's not important.
Yeah.
You know, Miles Davis, he's like, you know, somebody asked him in an interview why he wasn't concerned about hitting every note perfectly. Yeah. And his response was like, I'm only concerned about playing the important notes.
Word.
But I think when you're young and you're starting off, you're trying to do everything and you're trying to like kind of like be all over the place. And I can look at like my production of everything and it's like, I have the capabilities of doing all these things, but like, do I have the capability of doing all these things great? And then you start to come to a space of like wanting to do things greater than what you did instead of just doing mass amounts of things. So I think like creatively, I'm coming into a space where I'm trying to be more conscious over what I'm creating, even though, and this, I mean, I hope this whole conversation is like, makes sense, but even though I still don't understand. And this goes to the question that you asked. I like to keep myself, this is what it was. In all these years, there was a part of me that changed up what I was doing because I liked the unknown. I liked continually staying in the unknown because I was interested in the problem solving.
Word.
And I think that's what creativity is problem solving. At the same time, right now, it's like I'm trying to not only be in the unknown, but to master. And I think this is wisdom. And I think this is like from experiences that
speaks to the training aspect.
The training. Yeah. So like, you know, you look at like Japanese craftsmen and I watch like a lot of different, I watched one other day where like this guy's 50 years old and all he makes is paintbrushes. Single paintbrushes that can go for $13,000 for calligraphy.
Yeah.
But he doesn't do paintbrushes, this, that, and everything else. He just makes paintbrushes. Or like another craftsman that all he makes is scissors.
Yeah. Certified artisans.
But they just dedicate their whole life to one idea.
Absolutely.
Right? So we don't really live in that, we weren't really taught or live in that state where there's the beauty in that process of dedication to one thing, to kind of master it, whether you fully master it or not. And I think it goes into like this philosophy of wabi-sabi where it's like there's such a balance between perfection and imperfection that is then perfect. And the fact that of coming to realization that nothing is perfect. And like one of the ideas in that book is like even a surgeon's scalpel to the naked eye is perfect. But if you took a microscope to it, you would still see little ridges in it.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's like this idea of accepting that nothing is perfect. So for me, like now I constantly wanted keep myself in this space of the unknown. And I think that's why, like, I traveled a lot and I went to places that were kind of rough or different, not comfortable, and all those type of things, and to continually change up my work into different mediums that I didn't understand, or I had to learn a new trade or learn a new skill to try to like adapt this idea into this process. And now I'm coming to a space where like I'm more so trying to discipline myself in sticking with something. And sticking with something to understand it fuller and not just move to the next thing.
I call that vet shit. That's veteran shit. It's like, you know, yeah, you're a vet, dog. Because this is the thing. You've been, you know, you're clearly a pro in what you do. And when you think of like...
I'm not a pro in what I do. I'm a pro in continuing.
See, that's what makes you a pro. I'm not saying a pro. If you look at the details of, I'm not talking about you create, you're a maker. You're a pro in being a maker. Specifically what you're making, you might not be a pro in. And that's but what happens is that sometimes my perception is that sometimes it's like the range of pros. You get those people who are clearly a pro because they can perform, but they're young, they're wily, and you can see where their professionalism drops off, or where, you know, or where their performance is skyrocketed. You know, there's just a different type of pro. And then you get people that are middle range pros, where it's like, maybe they changed their whole game up. You know what I mean? It's like, I had to switch my whole game up. And they're like, they're still a pro, but they're taking on different, maybe not as wily, maybe not as springy or whatever it may be. They're starting to understand their game. And then you have vets, where it's like, they have such an understanding and they're trying to develop the understanding of like self really. So then it's like, whatever they do is ill. Yeah. They might not be as all over the place. You know what I mean? They might not be as sporadic. They might not be as quote unquote, and I don't even want to say exciting. It's just a very different game when you look at veteranship versus like the young, and it does, sometimes it comes with age, sometimes it comes with experience, sometimes it comes with an experience that happens, something that occurs. So I appreciate, it's like, you
also
are in
comes
space.
with like, what do you have, like the seriousness of what you have to lose or gain.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times that's age, because you're young, you like, I'm out here, I'm about to do whatever the hell I want, bam, 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 bam. And then when you have taken time and created something, you're like, oh, okay. And then you start to see, well, what makes sense. And it's like, well, energetically, it's like, I'm not just going to be out here. I do want to direct my energy, you know what I mean? In a healthy manner. And it's funny because we always talk about it in ball. I would meet the old heads when I was young and be like, they look smaller than what I had in my mind. And that, I'll never forget, Michael Strahan, one of the first conversations I had with him, he looked lighter than smaller. So I was like, yo, Mike, you always played at this weight? And he was like, nah. And he laughed almost like, that's a young question, because he's like, I know I used to be bigger. And he was like, and you'll learn as you stay in this league, it's not all about that size. You gotta be able to move. The game is about being able, and if you can't move, you can't play. He's like, so for me, I realized I had to find a weight that worked for me, that I was able to actually use my skills the best, as opposed to just being strong and now I'm slow and these young cats is out here, it's like, and that's where it's like you learn the wisdom through action, and that gives you a better understanding of how you want to move throughout, you know what I mean? But yeah, I just see that as vet shit. And I do, you've always, from when I've met you, you've been a pro, but I can literally see you are absolutely a veteran in your teaching. I'm watching you teach. I'm watching you really have an understanding of the systems you're trying to put in place. And not to say you're not going to learn in certain, you know what I mean? Like, you're learning all that shit, but it is really dope to be able to see you be that guy that's like, nah, you can explain. You could absolutely teach and be able to move and help individuals and have an articulation in regards to, okay, no, this is how you want it, boom, 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 and the reason why you do this. And this is the thing. It's like you're not just saying shit. You would be speaking on the reason why you want to do this. Like, I know you help your team in regards to organization and everything like that. You know what I mean? It's like you're not necessarily trying to like help them be better painters or, you know, that's not what it's about. It's like, nah, I'm going to teach you on, you want to do this because you are on how to do this, because you are, not only are you a maker, but you've actualized stuff. And you, from the conversations we've had, and I would like to dive into this, you've always had a plan. You know, we used to talk about, you know, the artistry and the process of being an artist from a profession aspect. It's not just somebody that's out here like, yeah, I just make art, like, you know, on my pastime and everything. Like, yo, this is, you chose to, yo, I'm going to make this into my life and my career. And there's a strategy sometimes that comes along with that. And there is. And you've always been, to me, you've had somewhat of a clear understanding of, I don't know where it's going to end, but I know how I'm going to do this and I'm going to go about it. And it was very methodical for me. And it was very almost like training to me. It was like, no, I'm going to be in this place. I'm going to stay in my white belt. And I know I'm maybe more talented to be a blue belt, but I'm going to stay in this white belt and make sure I get everything I can out of this white belt. Then I'll step on to the blue belt and I'll stay in this blue belt. And, you know, in reference to the art, it was in the, you know, those 2010 and 2011, it was like, yo, we were seeing so much art pop. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about the prices of like range and stuff like that. It's like, yo, I know the art you're making is doper than a lot of this stuff. And we'd be like, yo, can't you just, you can charge more for your art. And I remember you saying like, nah, like I want to be slow cook this. You know what I mean? Like we always talk about this, like, yo, we're going to crock pot this in regards to, I'd rather slow the process down or just make sure that the process is moving at a correct rate so that we're checking boxes and stuff like that, as opposed to just rushing. And, you know, and I think that's a discipline and a growth and a maturity to be able to have that and not want to just jump on the next, you know what I mean? Because that's what pop. It's like, yo, everybody wants to be a part of what's popping and be seen as what's popping, but staying true to really you, it's like, that's not really what motivates me. You really are motivated by the process. You really are motivated by like the methodical aspect of how you're creating, and then adding in the, I want to step into the unknown, but I'm gonna methodically step into the unknown. Mm-hmm. You're not rushing. Like I don't ever see you try to rush it. And we've talked about this. And I would like, we used to always say you're wild labor intensive because I'll never forget when I was like, yo, you be doing this shit crazy, bro. And you used to say, yeah, every time I've tried to do it any other way, it sucks.
What do you mean?
Remember when we used to talk about, we would say, especially when you were making with the tar and the metal and the framework, it was labor intensive. Like your work was hard and it was labor. I used to be like, yo, and bro we used to always say, like, yo, there's so much to this process and it's hard and it's like painful and exhausting. And even in us, we're being like, yo, there ain't no easier way to do this. And you said to me, every time I've tried to do it an easier way, the arts came out trash.
Yeah. I don't know the exact full reason that hasn't kind of come to light yet of why my practice gravitates towards labor in a sense of physical exertion.
Yeah.
Obviously right now I can look at it and understand like the figuration of even the things that I'm creating and understand the space that these maybe individuals may be in is a very labor and hard life.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a portion of that like I'm not just painting those things and haven't experienced that, you know, like I look at everything from when I dropped out of college to not knowing anything and learning how to be a fabricator and make things. Like it was nothing but like, you know, it was labor, but like I grew up doing landscaping, doing gardening, doing all this type of things. Like I've had jobs since I was, I guess, 13 years old. Literally I look at it and I'd be like, yo, I've worked in every industry. I've worked at Trader Joe's. I've worked at Foot Locker. I've worked at, you know, a garden place. I've done landscaping. I've done minor construction. I've done, you know, like everything under that realm because like I never wanted to be broke. And two, like I didn't, like goes into like what you have to lose, like didn't really have anything to fall back on, like in the sense of like family, financial, like I was fine, like we grew up fine, but like I consciously knew at a young age, like I have to figure out how to make it, like, and, but I think that I convinced myself that if the work wasn't labor intensive, there was no value in it. So that I needed to
sense.
I needed to, like, I desired to learn how to do things that were simpler, but in a sense, I guess as well, because I didn't go to art school and I knew that I was coming from, like when I came out into the art world, I definitely was maybe on the tail end of what is now needed to be a so-called professional artist in the art world, where, a Yale MFA and all these other things, the accolades don't matter anymore,
Right.
Which still did when I moved to New York in 2009. Like, as a black artist, going to Yale, going to Studio Museum of Harlem residency, all these different things that if you punched off the list, like you were kind of going to be not a shooin', but like you were going to get the eyes
a little more,
on
yeah,
it,
you're
right?
giving a little more credit. It's credentials.
So for me, like I felt, maybe, and I don't know if I felt this way, but maybe I had to make it up with like the practice in the sense of the knowledge and the labor that I would put into these things and kind of have, and it's almost like I can look at it as layers,
Word.
Like layers of these materials and things and ideas and all these things that kind of like gave the work meaning. Because I think there's another part of it, and this just goes into the art world, where I am fully conscious that it is a smoke and mirrors world.
Yeah.
That I'm part of. I can separate it and understand the value of the historical value of art and why it's needed. And to me, I can look at it that art is, and I say this in a certain type of way, but to me, art is a thing that actually the world revolves around. Meaning this,
1,000%.
Not painting per se, but creativity. Meaning like everything that you do is to be able to have a better livelihood, right? And in the sense that like once you get out of a place of just trying to survive and put food in your mouth, you want to have a nicer place to live. What does that mean? That you want to have designed everything from the bookshelves, right? Which is all creativity, right? You want to have things that stimulate your visual and mind, whether it's food. All those things are creative. So like people, in a sense, gather wealth to be able to have
to
nicer things,
do that,
right? So like to me, everything, food, clothing, cars, your house, your travels, everything gardens, flowers, everything that you do is like a space of creativity that you're inspired off of these things that are beautiful and to me, or interesting. And to me, like that's what art is. But
to be able to get to that space, for most people, they can't, where their entire life is around creating that creativity for themselves. So I understand exactly what you're saying. It's like the root of it is like what people are trying to get to ideally is to just be able to create. They just want to be in these creative spaces of...
Well, I think it's not a matter of people wanting to get to a place of creating, because I think as well being in the art world, and this is the blessing about being an artist, it's either underdeveloped or they don't have it. I do look at creativity as a gift.
Yeah.
Right? And I look at the support of art of a lot of collectors, because now I've been in this world a long time. A lot of collectors don't have any creativity. A lot of people that collect art and are interested in art don't have any creativity, or haven't nurtured an idea for it to develop into their own creativity. So the best thing that they can do is support art because it's the closest thing that they can get to the creative process. And that's another reason why
you don't think they actually want to internally?
What?
You don't think they actually would love to be able to create? Like, I don't think they, I think
everybody wants to create. The problem with creating is that people don't want to work. Listen, creating is such a, creating to me doesn't make sense because the reality is that you're solely doing it for yourself in a lot of ways. So you can find an excuse a lot of times to put your energy towards something else that actually makes sense. That's why when you think about back in the day, now it's very much supported because of the culture we live in. But even when I grew up, when I dropped out of college from business school, I talked to my pastor. I talked to different people that were the only structural people that were in my life. And they were like, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. Because what security do you have in creativity? What security do you have in going towards this imagination and this idea of it? That's something that's inspired you. It doesn't make sense. What does make sense is following the structure where it's like, yes, if I do this, I can get a degree, I can get a business, I can do this, and I can make a living. But creativity is such a thing where it's all imagination. So you're creating something that doesn't really exist. Whatever you're creating doesn't really exist. It may be an interpretation of something that does exist, but it's still something new because you're now making it. And you can lose steam really quickly with the creative process once you come to the space of problem solving. You make, you have this idea, it's easy to make. I have assistants and one of my assistants who is an artist himself, and I do think he's going to make it, but he's in that process where he thinks everything is easy. And I told my brother this the other day. He was like, "Oh, that's easy." I was like, "Dude, nothing's easy. Everything is time. Everything takes real time. Whether it's a short amount of time or a long amount of time, everything takes time. You got to stop saying everything's easy. Because if it's easy, then there's no reason for me to ask you to do it. There's no reason. There's no reason that you as a creative, I need to have you do it. Have anybody do it.
They won't find value in
this. Takes time. And once you realize that, that's what people are unwilling to invest is the time that it takes to have an idea come to fruition, to come to light, and then with that, then going at it again and going at it again. It's the same you are an athlete. Not
anymore.
I went to school in high school, and I'm sure that, and I played ball, and there was people on the teams that were, for sure, there's no reason they weren't going to go to the league.
Yeah.
This is high school.
They
were, the top Absolutely. Colleges were looking at them. There's no reason. Natural ability.
I ain't got shit to do with being a pro.
Nothing. And not one of them made it. They messed up in college. They messed up here. They didn't want to do the work. And that's, to me, the perfect example of a lot of people that can support the art. A lot of people that support any type of creativity or anything like that. They do. I believe everybody is inspired or has ideas or has these grand ideas of I want to do this. And I think once they start picking away at it, it just becomes overwhelming. And instead of learning how to deal with that process of something being overwhelming and understanding that it's going to take time.
Yeah.
Right. And being willing to say, this is the idea. I'm excited about this. But in reality, if I'm being honest with myself, this ain't happening for 5 years.
Word. Yeah.
That's a hard thing to swallow in the sense of this idea that you just went and told all your friends, I'm gonna create this clothing line.
Whatever it may be.
And the reality of that actually coming to a place where you see it actually working is 5-10 years down the line. And I think that's that thing where people say, 10,000 hours, 10,000 years. It's we live in a society now where you see people's success right away, but the reality is this is the reality of why it takes this much time, because of the wisdom that comes from experiences, the failures, the learning, the going in and out of it. And then all of that as well allows you to perfect your eye.
Word.
and your creativity so that it actually is your own. And I think like that's as well like kind of the space that I'm in too, where like I've gone all over the place in creativity and a lot of them have worked, but now it's like I'm slowing down and I'm learning how to take a bit more time with certain things and really understanding like, okay, I need to like really create these things as full. They are my own, but like really my own, and like really me in the sense of this, and not trying to just jump to the next thing or the next thing. So it's like, I think it's a continual thing that you have to practice. I think I have great discipline, but I also think that like, that's something that you have to continually, it's like jujitsu.
Yeah.
I don't do jujitsu, but like the principle of it is like, there's always going to be somebody that can put you down.
Absolutely.
Right. So like, it doesn't matter what level you get to, like you can still be,
that it's the process
tapped by somebody else. Like, so you learn something new and stuff is growing. It's like a continual where you're never going to get to that space, but like you're trying to get there.
What made you, and I think this is why, and to me that's a value thing. You have to value that enough to be willing, you know what I mean, in yourself, and to value it in regards to your world, to be willing to step into that space. Because like you said, it is scary. It doesn't make sense. And at the end of the day, you have people in your support structure to some degree saying, yeah, you're making a terrible decision. What about yourself, or what did you value enough? Because I feel it as an alignment. It's like, yo, that to me, and I know it's a semantics, or it is like, I guess, in how you see the world. And I know for everyone else, it doesn't make sense, creativity. I was raised in a household in the other way. It's the only thing that made sense. You know what I mean? Like my mom, and you know this from my mom and my dad as well. And not as much my dad in regards to, in relation to my mom. But that was the only thing that made sense for my mom, was creativity. And I know where it came from, because for her, she was like, a lot of her upbringing was trying to keep that spirit alive and support that. So she was like, I'm going to raise my children where they're going to understanding how important it is to be that. You know what I mean? And so, but it was around like health. It was like, the more creative you are in regards to honoring what that is, that will make you healthy. And for you to say like, yo, it aligned with you, like you clearly, you valued it. So even in hearing other people being like, it doesn't make sense, well, you made it make sense to you, or you saw it in some capacity. So like, what is that like? What was it that made you be like, yo, I'm going to do this regardless, because it does resonate with me?
Well, I mean, I think it goes down to that key word of value. Mm-hmm. And it's something that me and you have talked about, but definitely me and Nedek talked about on a regular, because we were always together. But it's understanding the meaning of none of this matters. The idea that none of it matters. And that's something that me and Nedek used to talk about too, is like, because he used to always make excuses of why he didn't finish anything. Yeah. Right? But then at the same time, because of the idea that nothing matters, and none of it does matter.
And you have to make it matter. No.
Right? None of it does matter. But the point is that you have to come to a place of tricking your mind
what matters
into
to you.
Understanding that it does matter. Because that the reality is, like, I'm making these paintings with plastic. It's all BS. None of it matters. Because the thing is like, there's value in it right now. But there's conscious understanding that I have that, like, we go into World War III, who cares about my paintings, or who cares about any of this stuff? Or if there's a natural catastrophe, or what happened in Mexico happens. Like, none of this stuff matters. We just built for 4 years and built our houses and built the places that I thought I was going to have for the rest of my life for my family. Yeah. And then one day it's gone. So what matters? Exactly. But what matters is going through the process of enduring and going through that whole thing. And that's the only thing that you can take away from these things. So for me, it's like, I know it's a continual constant. It's never a focused 100% illusion of mind frame that I'm in, of like, that it does matter. Word. I'm constantly in a state of like, I don't even want to go to the studio. I don't want, none of this matters. I don't need more money. I don't care about this. But it's not about that. It's literally the discipline of the vision of like, I'm trying to get here, and I'm willing to like continue to endure. and go through this. And I think that is what value is. It's value that you have placed upon it. Because again, what I value, no one else, that does not mean somebody else is going to value it at all. So it's really not even a matter that you try to convince other people that it's valuable. It's really it's who you are in life. It's your life that you're saying, these are the things that matter to me. These are the things that are valuable, and this is what I'm going to give my time on. Right. And I think like that's the biggest beef that I have with people that come up with ideas and inspirations and everything like that. It's like, you're going to spend this time regardless. So you can spend this time saying you want to do something and complaining and not pursuing it, or you could spend this time failing, but you're still failing going after something. And I used to always look at the fortunate position that I was in as a creative as that, like, because from 2009 when I dropped out of, no, not 2009, that's when I moved to New York. From 2003 or 2002, no, dang, when not? Maybe 2002 when I dropped out of college to 2009, and even in New York too. But like, I went through every lifestyle of an artist, you know, as a creative that you could think of. Living in kitchens, taking showers in the kitchen sink, you know what I mean? Like bird bath, like doing, not having food, whatever it was. And I used to always look at it like, I'm struggling, but I'm blessed because I'm struggling going after something that is my desire. So like that struggle is struggle. It's still struggle. It's still, I can't pay my bills. I'm still running from the landlord. I'm still like, you know, lights are getting cut off. Don't have gas, but I'm struggling pursuing something. So it's like, I'd rather be in that position than being wishing or wanting that I'm going after something that I find valuable, but not willing to put the time in for it.
That perspective.
But I think, just not to cut you off, but I think that is the mindset, and I've never been a big meditator or any of those type of things, but I think that is the tricking of the mind that a person has to put themselves into.
There we go.
Because that's really what it is. Like, I have convinced myself that this idea that I have is going to work. It doesn't make any sense to everybody else.
It doesn't
I know
have to.
that.
That's the point.
It doesn't even make sense to myself. But I'm tricking myself enough that, like, this is going to pay off.
And that's how it works. That's literally hypnosis.
Yeah.
And that's the same shit with me. When people used to say, like, yo, why do you... And I'm like, I tell myself what I want to tell myself, so I believe that I can do something. I don't care whatever it is. Whether it's I'm going to tell myself I'm playing a video game and I'm going to win the video game, and at the end of the video game, I'm this, whatever it may be. Yo, if this workout is wild hard, I got to do this. Like, well, at the end of the workout, I'm literally leveling up. Like, whatever you convince yourself, and this is so I 1000% agree with you in regard to you are convincing yourself. And this is where I don't, for me, I try to, most of my world, I try to work from a positive deficit. I don't know, those are contradictory words, but I don't want to work from a negative deficit. So I work from a space of creation as opposed to change. So I don't speak from what I don't want. I only speak from what I'm trying to actually build and what I'm trying to create, what I want for myself, what I don't. I'm not going to ever say, well, I don't want this. You know, and that's not in totality, but really, you know, I have it tattooed on my arm, you know, focus on what you want to create as opposed to what you want to change. So for me, it was around, I know none of this shit. Like, what I did, it's just not important. Who gives a fuck? Like, it's not important. It's important to me. And that's the most important thing for what I'm trying to create. And I think that when we're able to, as individuals, and it's difficult because the world tells you not to actually focus on what you value. Like, you know what I mean? Not to create your own values. It tells you that, yo, you should have values based upon what other people say. And for me, it's like, you have to be honest with yourself and create your own values. So then you can say, what is important to my world? You know what I mean? And that's a really interesting thing when I love when I can see it in people where it's like, no, they did that. And it's like, I know that to everybody else, this looks silly. All my friends were like, yo, you bugging, dude. Like, you going to do all this? You going to watch this film when you're 12 years old? You going to do this because you think you're going to wear? And I'm like, I love I want to be the best at this. And for me, it wasn't even about playing in the NFL. I was like, I just want to be really good. And when I wanted to be really good, I was like, I know myself. For me to be really good, I have to give energy to it. Mm-hmm. And I want to be really good at something. And that's how it's always been. And so hearing you literally just, all it does is just reinforce my perspective, because I've watched it with you. And I used to tell, me and Ken used to be like, of course Hugo's going to win. And we used to tell other people when they would, maybe have a reference point around, and we were like, no, you have to acknowledge he knows himself. He knows what he wants. And I don't care what anybody, if you are willing to give it to yourself, you will win. Because if your perspective is, no. I know that I don't know how this is going to end up, but I know I'm going to gain value as I go in this, and I'm continuing to stay in it. Yeah, it's going to work out. That's how the universe works out. But that's losing is part of the game when you stay in.
And that's the thing. It's like you'll lose.
Yeah.
But you have to find the value in losing.
In losing. That's the point. You have to find the value. It's all in the perspective. Yeah. And the perspective, like you said, I'm tricking myself. I'm convincing myself all the time. All the time. You have to. You have to find the value in it all. It's like pull out. And I'm fortunate. My dad and my mom, they gave me like tools, and then I just kind of took them and I ran with them. I was like, oh, I can see. Like everything. And it's different. You didn't necessarily had, like I had teachers, I had coaches. Most of my coaches I didn't like. And it was like, oh, but they're going to be my coach. So I have to find the value in them if I know they're going to be my coach. Or I could quit because I don't want them to be my coach. But it's like, no, but I love X more than I hate Y. So I got to stay in this. And I'm going to actually like figure out if I'm going to spend, like for instance, if you say, I'm going to be doing this regardless. So it's like, I'm going to be around you regardless. So I might as well find something positive to pull from you. Even if the positive is, I don't want to be like you. You know what I mean? I'm going to take from that. And this is like, every time you step into a space, it's like, pull something that benefits you, that you can add on. And I have this phrase where I say like, add to your attributes in everything. Like, I don't want to be around somebody that can't add to me. At this point in time, you know what I mean? Like, I really am looking from a place of like, either they're going to represent an aspect of me that I love, they're going to make me better in an aspect I want to develop in, or something. And that's where it's like, the world I'm trying to create are individuals that want that as well. And then we can build. Because to me, that's like, that's team, that's try. That's all the shit. So you want to be around people that are going to push you, that are going to help you, support you in that aspect. And it doesn't mean literal like go along shit. It's like, nah, I want my homies that I look at, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's me. That's a representation of me. And that's 1000%. That's been you. When you were leaving school or New York, did you feel inequipped? Because I do want to give now to the other aspect. I do want to give perspective to the other aspect where people can connect to if there is a moment of doubt. So like, did you feel inequipped in the artist world, or did you always feel like, nah, I can hang even if I don't have the qualifications? What made you feel like I can stay in this? Or what moments where you had to like persevere? Would you feel like, I said, at the end of the day, it's all those things. Did you feel like you were not having the credentials, or maybe not having the skill sets that, and having to learn?
I think certain people, or myself, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, are driven not just from a space of inspiration or an idea, but also by challenge, right? But like conscious understanding challenge. So like, and I think this goes again into like the tricking of the mind or hypnosis, meditating on an idea where you're there mentally, but maybe not physically. That I've always and still feel doubt, insecure, whether it's there's levels of those emotions and those real feelings.
Yeah.
No matter how leveled up you are to where you're trying to be.
Word.
Right? So like, I know when I step outside of myself, I can see where I am at within my world, in the context of my world. At the same time, I can instantly put my mind frame in another space where like, I'm now inferior to maybe where I'm trying to go.
Yeah. In relation to something else.
Right? So it's like in one position, I think this goes into value. In one position, I'm at the top. But then once I look to that next goal, which I think is as well what inspiration and creativity is, now I'm inferior. So it's just constant like battling of the mind of that space of understanding where you are and understanding where you're trying to go and having the confidence to continue to push. But I feel like, artists, you have to give credit to even bad artists, bad creatives.
Anybody who's willing
because
to put
the thing is, if you're willing to put yourself out there for the world to judge and critique, then there's something that is brave inside of you, right? Because really, like, yes, and this is how I try to like create as an artist, is that when I'm in the studio, I try to limit the amount of focus and energy that I'm putting on what I'm creating of how the response is going to be from the audience.
Wonderful, yeah.
So that I do not create for the audience. And this is like such a back and forth, because on one hand, you are curating what you're creating. It's such a weird back and forth. On one hand, you are curating and creating for the consumption of the audience. But at the same time, there's this same space of mind frame where you know that you have to stay genuine within yourself of creating, because to me, the real audience can feel the difference between something that is like not real and not true to who you are and real. And to me, like, I'm constantly in a space of somewhat, not negatively, but like constantly in a space of doubt, constantly in a space of inferiority. But I think that I keep that in a space that is healthy, because I think that's what keeps me on my toes and trying to continue to push who I am as a creative. Because I think there's genuine people out there that I truly respect and admire as creatives. And most of those people are definitely older. Like, they're older. And so I can look at their creation. I can look at their life. I can look at the time period that they created in, and be understanding of also the things that were going on in that time period that they obviously had to deal with in some regard. And you're not trying to live up to their standards, but you're trying to see yourself that if you saw what you're doing next to what they've done, it holds its own. And I try to want what I'm doing to hold its own without my words. So like, I don't want my words or my explanation to be the weight and the strength of my work. I want what I'm doing to be the strength, which comes from all the experiences, all the things that I've created over time that gives like a strength and value to that piece. Yeah. But I think that doubt is a common thing for every creative. Like, it's just this weird space, because I think there's no like the idea of creating, like the whole definition. I don't know what the Webster definition of it, but I would say in my layman terms that the definition of creating is that you're something is being developed that does not exist. And if it doesn't exist, then how can you know what the response of the viewer is going to be? So if I'm creating something new, it could be the same exact thing. It's still going to be new because it's your hand that's doing it and you're seeing things in your own way. So you could try to do something exactly the same as somebody else, but it's still going to be somewhat different.
Yep.
And I think like that is then going to be judged. And I think once anybody's judging anybody, no matter how confident you are as an individual, you could say like, you don't care. Like, again, he's not the point of the conversation, but like even Nedic, as confident as that dude was.
Hold on, listen. You already know that bro would love to take over a fucking conversation that he's not even involved in. So yes,
but as confident as he was mad insecure.
Absolutely. We and it's funny. I love that. And bro, I don't want to say you were insecure. But because I don't like to live like an overall, but I do think that we could see his insecurities play out. You know what I mean?
Well, not insecure in general.
I get you. Exactly.
Insecure in certain things where like it would handicap him from finding reason to push forward. And it's the same as me. Like I'm the same way. All of this. So I think that is what creativity is. Like, that's the process that's the portion of the creative process that you have to get over and have confidence in whatever you're doing. Confidence that is not dictated by anybody outside of yourself.
Word.
You know?
Does your work, and I don't want to say art, does your work create a space, and this is like, you think about this as your body of work and where you're at right now as well. Does your work create a space for you to tell a story about yourself or just tell a story?
I think about that a lot actually lately because I'm definitely like, there's been obviously some crazy shifts in my life in the last year and a half that is also shifting my perspective of my work. But I can look at like, just for example, like this series of The Burden Man, right? And I can look at that idea and my heart is always kind of gone towards there. It's like, there's a scripture in the Bible that says like, like basically like the idea of keeping yourself in association with the humble, people that don't have. And in reality, I've always been more comfortable with those individuals than I am with the affluent.
Word.
And it's a very interesting world being a creative, even when I was in design. And once my design took off in California, in the Bay, I was not making fountains for suburban people. You know what I mean? So I was broke.
Yeah.
And, getting my stuff off the ground, but my designs were good enough that it was drawing the attention of the people that lived up in the hills and the people that lived in very like rich neighborhoods and the people that actually had a lot of money. Art is the same way, where like, yes, the general population has the ability to see your work, but the people that are consuming it and the people that are supporting you and the people that are collecting it are people that are in a different level than you. And it's always such a weird world as well when I look at my work of a lot of things that I've drawn from. So like when I first started making art in 2006, I was doing design and I went to South Africa with some friends and they were architects and they were doing a project in Soweto and I was with them. I piggybacked on that trip and I was with them and we were in a part of Soweto that was all the shanties. And I, at that time, mentally, I was trying to find a shift into art because I didn't want to see myself as a manager of design, where like I was managing a team creating my designs.
Word.
And I wanted the freedom of what art, so-called, would grant me, in the sense of the ability to continually change an idea, right? So with design, it's very specific. Like, this is what I designed, exactly like this, and now you've signed off on this, and now this is what you're expecting.
Yeah.
Or design has to do with measurements. So like, even if it's you're doing it for yourself, you're following measurements, you're following architecture that you've created for this idea, that it needs to follow that for it to come to pass. Well, with art, like, you have the freedom of changing. But when I was in Soweto and I saw the shanty houses, immediately I knew, because I was already working with metal, I was working with patinas, I was working with oxidation. And there was, immediately when I saw the shanty houses and I saw like how the walls and stuff were built with just clads of different types of metal and materials, that just kind of created this. I always was in my head like, if you took this wall that was just this rough material that's in the context of all these other shanty houses, and you took this wall and you put it in a white box gallery, framed, now all these things that are looked at in a sense of undesired,
it changes it.
And now the people that look at it that is undesired now find value in it. And that's how I used to always, and that goes into that book. And I probably had that book. It's probably my favorite book, and probably one of the only books that I've like continually read is that Wabi Sabi book, because it's like, it has to do with value and how value can quickly change. And that's how I saw like those walls of this thing that people look down upon, the people that support the arts, not look down upon, but want no desire to be part of that lifestyle.
They don't see the value.
If you took that same thing and then put it in a different context, now there's value to it, and there's beauty in it, and there's interest in it. And so that became kind of like the thought process within all of my creative mindset, in a sense of like, these houses have no value. These people also, in a sense, are looked at with very little value. How can you make those things be perceived in a different way? And so like, that's usually always kind of like the catalyst and the foundation of all the different bodies of work. And that's one of the reasons why I've traveled so much to these kind of different types of environments. And I think when I was doing abstraction, of how even now the figuration has come into play, where it was like, I was tired of trying to tell what I was interested in through an abstracted idea, because the audience wasn't picking up on it.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that I try to do in my creation, is this is a negative thing, or a thing that is looked at in a negative way, but I'm gonna make it beautiful. So once people saw beauty in it, they weren't interested in the story, the backstory of what it actually came with. So it's like, there was never interest in like, okay, this is supposed to be like an idea of this, and then going deeper into like the background of that idea. And that's as well like the stamping works that I did. Like the stamping works that I was making was like this idea of roofing material, tar paper, right? The tar paper that's on almost all the roofs in the East Coast and New York, right? Yeah. The silver roofs. And the idea of that manual labor, and the idea of like this, the idea of like this tar is a thing of protection. Like, it protects whoever lives in the place below. The stamping process was the idea of the Indian block printing, and the idea of the labor that goes into carving the wood blocks and carving these things. And this just goes into like my thought process. But when I created that process with the block printing, and I went to India, so it went from the metal work into all these different bodies of work, but it's just the metal work and then this block printing into the plastic work of everything like that. It all still follows the same line, is that I saw the material and I saw this jewel like of the silverness of the roofs, right? And then I was like, oh, I like the way that this material embosses, like takes prints, takes your footprint or whatever like that. And then I started thinking about whatever got me on YouTube, got me then somehow into India and the wood block printing and like textile making, and the idea of the block printing this pattern on this textile, and this goes into value and perfection and all these things. And it was like this man is putting ink on this block and stamping the fabric, right? And because consciously I know that this man created this thing by hand, it's perfect and it's beautiful, even though the lines don't perfectly match
line up. That's what makes it perfect.
And the thing is that if this pattern was made by a machine and that machine had a bump in it and the pattern went a little ways, you would look at that as a space of imperfect and you would discard of it, right? So like there was this idea of this hand repetition and this hand thing being done, of the imperfection being perfect, and how we as people, there's
this is gold right here. Hold on, this is gold right here, people. No, I don't know if you fucking know, but it is gold. It is, brother. I hope everybody knows this shit is fucking gold right now. Okay,
but it was to me like the idea that the human person, they can say all they want, that they want things that are perfect, but in reality they don't. And the reason why people do not want things that are perfect is because we are flawed and we're continually degrading. So the more something is perfect, it's like people that, when I was in design, like people, you know, like there was that moment of like everything being perfectly white, everything being stuff like that. Well, like how many times can you sit on that couch before like it's not perfectly white anymore? How many times can any of that stuff before it's not? So like there was this balance between the perfection and imperfection, the rough and the new and the organic. So like this is how like my creative process works. So like there was this idea of this handprint of this block and this thing. Then I was like, I went to India and I went to the slum in Dhaaravi, which is the biggest slum in the world. Yeah. And part of that slum, but it's a slum. And again, this is like, it's a continual back and forth of my creative process. It's a slum. However, it's also a multi-billion-dollar industry that serves the slum that serves itself outside of the slum. So because within the slum there's hundreds of thousands of different factories and different works and trades of people that make this and that, whatever it is, that is servicing the outside. The same way like another slum that was in Hong Kong, which was called Kolong, which is no longer there, which is in Hong Kong, but it was a slum. It's where they shot that movie with Van Damme. Whoever's old enough to know Van Damme.
What do you mean the greatest, Street Fighter the movie. Best ever?
Right. So like they shot the fighting scene in Kolong.
Jean-Claude.
But like I did research on Kolong, and like there was noodle factories in there that literally, I'm talking slum. Like there's documentaries, you can watch it. There's noodle factories in there that sell their noodles to the Michelin star to the high-end restaurants in Hong Kong because they can get it cheaper. Word. But it's still an industry. It's still bringing money.
Absolutely.
So I went to India, and I went to this area that I was interested in, and this is everything like works. This is also then how the plastic work came about years later. But like I went there, I went and talked to some people that does a block printing and witnessed like how it's done. I brought the blocks back, and then I tried this idea with the stamp paintings. Yeah. And I liked it. The silver, the reflectiveness, it was like a jewel-like, right? At the same time, you have to understand, like, that was the beauty that I was creating out of this idea. And then it came down to breaking down. And I think that this is going to hopefully come back to your general question.
No, you're right here, brother. You're good, man.
It came down to the idea of, okay, now this idea of this process works. the process that I've created with this material. It has to do with labor. It has to do with materials. It has to do with like all those type of things. Then it came down to like this block printing.
Yeah.
So like I was in India and you're looking at patterns that they're creating of textiles. These symbols, these things have to do with their culture, these things. So I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I went to Strand Bookstore in New York City and I bought a book on ornamentation and like different designs and patterns. And I was looking at all these designs, and this is just my mind frame. I was looking at all these different designs of like Arabic designs and Latin designs, all these different, like, oh, this one's cool, right? And I was like, this will make a fresh block and a fresh pattern. And I was like, after I saw all these things and I'm inspired for a second, then I was like, but what relationship do I have to this Arabic pattern, this African pattern, this Asian or whatever it is? None. And I was like, well, this doesn't relate to who I am or the value or any of these type of things or the story that I'm trying to create. And I lived in Bushwick, and this is before Bushwick became Bushwick, of what it is now, kind of gentrified and stuff like that. But I ran all the time.
Yeah.
Ran, I ran through these neighborhoods.
Oh, you a running ass dude,
right?
dude. You know
so
that.
like,
you be running.
yeah, I'm trying to get back. But like at that time, I was running like crazy. But I ran through the hoods, and I remember running through like all through Marcy and all those things, like basically from Bushwick all the way over to Nostrand, all through the Brooklyn Bridge.
Word.
And I noticed in these hoods how, again, this goes into the same idea of like, as a creative, you're living in different worlds. Once you start to get visibility, you're living in multiple different worlds. You're living in your reality, and you're also living in the reality of the world that you're partaking in.
Yeah, engaging,
right?
In whatever maybe, yeah.
And I used to notice discarded furniture, like in front of the project houses or in front of buildings, right? Like a couch and bedding, like mattresses. And I started to notice, like, after these runs of how these pieces of furniture were just left there. Like, it wasn't like they were brought out on a Thursday and then picked up by the garbage man. They were left there for like a full season, degrading. Yeah. But then I used to think about it and be like, yo, if this furniture was in Chelsea, this would be picked up no more than a couple of days. Like, it would be picked up, or in a, Upper East Side or whatever like that. Like, it would be out there for the day that they put it in, the garbage man would come pick it up. Like, there's no way. I remember watching pieces of furniture go through a whole winter where like it got covered in completely snow and then be running and then slowly start seeing the ice melt,
come back,
and then the furniture is still there. And in my mind frame, I was looking for like who I was, what am I trying to talk about, and value, and the value of things. And then on my runs, I started seeing the patterns of the furniture textiles that was thrown out in front of these areas, in front of Marcy Projects, in front of all these different areas. And I started documenting them with my phone. So I started, and I was like, these are going to be the patterns that I'm going to put on the wood blocks of these pieces of furniture, the textiles that were of the fabric that were on either the bed mattresses or the couches or chairs. These are the patterns, because it's this idea.
That's what it represents.
But the paintings, and this is my creative process. So not going to art school, not studying color theory, not studying all these things. I knew what my eye was drawn to, but I didn't have any understanding because I was still young in my practice and didn't have the experience. So I didn't fully understand color theory, and I didn't understand how to put colors that you normally wouldn't put together, but how they make a story in the sense of how they go together, their relationship. But colors are the same. So, when I started design, I look at myself like I did put myself through college and education, because when I started design, I spent my nights at Barnes & Noble bookstore looking at design magazines and then being like, this is a fresh house. If I was to design a fountain in this house, how would I put one in here? And then I would just draw fountains, or I would draw a design. And that's how I started to designing in spaces. And so when it came to the art, it was the same thing. Like, I know what I'm drawn to. So I looked at fashion designers, couture fashion designers, like Givenchy and Gaultier and all these different ones, because of the colors that they would like, not like the stuff that
I know
homies buying, right?
Yeah. You talking
but like
about
the couture dresses and all
exactly.
that stuff, and the colors and the textiles that they made, and these different uses of colors and patterns that they would do. And I was like, and I saw like my color story, my color theory growing. But there was also something about these magazine covers or these magazine spreads where like you look at that, and whether you're supporting it or buying it or not, you look at it from a space of value. So when you see those dresses, you're automatically associating that with like money and value, and I either can or can't afford, or eliteness, or all these different things. So basically, my paintings on this tar paper were the paintings of the dresses, of the color patterns and color theories of these dresses. I remember doing one for Givenchy when Ricardo was still designer there. I sent it to him actually. But like, I would repaint these color stories. But then when I stamped it, I was stamping them with the patterns from the discarded furniture. Word. So then it was this idea in my head of the story that I was creating was like, these dresses you find valuable. These dresses, you automatically have no association. You don't know how much they cost. You don't know anything. But like, because you see it in this magazine, because this name is attached to it, or because it looks the way it is, this has great value to you.
Immediately.
But these pieces of furniture that you see in front of the hoods, in front of these neighborhoods, there's no value even to have them discarded and picked up.
Yeah,
there's no value from the city. There's no value from the people, the residents. There's no value. It's just there until it finally is like removed at some point in time.
Yeah, I don't even care about this enough to actually remove it. I'm just gonna let it
it's just gonna be
disintegrate.
there.
Yeah,
right.
Just till it no longer.
So it was this idea of taking something that's valuable, taking something that's not valuable, and overlapping it, and then be able to have this kind of story in the sense of, now it's up on this wall, this white wall in this gallery that also has this kind of like context of illusion of value because of the name associated with the gallery. And now you as a viewer find this valuable. So for me, it was like as a creative, I was constantly trying to sell the rich people and the people that have money something that they normally wouldn't want anything to do with. So that their mind frame, if they understood the story, would then finally be able to see things in a different way when they saw it out in the natural. And I think this is how the figuration kind of came into play, because that's what I was trying to creatively kind of continually tell this story of how we perceive things and how to look at things with a little bit more
humane.
I mean, I don't think that everybody's not inhumane. I understand the realities of life,
but you are. But it value. It's humane in the sense of, like, just because you don't see value in something doesn't mean it's not valuable.
Right.
Like and this is what I said, it's like you're basically telling the audience that you really are a man of the people. You're like really like your art, and I'm glad you spoke. It's you really do. You're somewhat of a voice for.
Well, it's in like the people down I'm putting in it. It's exactly. Like I got tired of trying to do it through an abstracted way.
Yeah, it's like, no.
So now it's like, what is the beauty? Because to me, the beauty in the Bird and Man series is not remotely the act of what they're actually doing, in the sense of like somebody pushing this overloaded cart. To me, the beauty in it is if you separate the image to the reality of the strength that the individual has to have
to go
mentally
through all this,
to continually do that day in, day out, to either provide food for themselves or for their family. That
look how
to me is beautiful.
Absolutely.
That to me is what's valuable. Nothing else. Like, I don't think that their act of the visual of what they're doing is like, so like, oh, that's amazing. Because we paint this picture of like these person
every day
selling fruit on the corner. Oh, look at this, I'm on vacation. This is like, no, think about it. Separate that from like, how much can this person practically make? Like, think about what is it like? How much could he actually make a day? Like $100? Like, what is it? And then how much does life actually cost? How much does it cost for my life to exist daily?
So it really goes to the why. Like, when you think about, when you get to the root of like why we do things as humans, and why most people, because of the position they're in or not in, what they have to do, you're giving them.
The thing is, again, like, and stuff is shifting now too within my practice because of my own experiences as of late. But like, it has been this conversation, and I think that is what has driven all of my travel experiences and stuff like that, and has driven the direction of my work. Is like, it's always been under the light of seeing things, to me, I guess, the way that I see all these things, like how I value all these things, and then it goes back to that humble idea. It's like always, in some sense as well, keeping myself somewhat low to the ground consciously, and never getting to a space as an artist, or because you can grow in this space where it's such a ridiculous,
we become so disconnected from
reality
from the culture,
of like the normal world. But and I say this very respectfully, and also kind of like just from a space of consciousness, that like, it could be gone tomorrow. My work could be irrelevant tomorrow, and I'd rather still be connected to my reality of certain things. Like, this may be my reality right now, but I'd rather be connected to other things as well, and not just this space that I've been granted, because you understand, or blessed with.
Nothing is matters. What? And I like that you said that in the abstract, the message was lost sometimes that you were trying to get. So are you finding now that in what you're doing, are you finding now that somewhat the message isn't? Because it's all the same. It's still part of the process.
This is also then what you start to learn through wisdom and stuff like this, and then goes into that same thing where it's like, who you're supposed to connect to in life and who you're supposed to reach is the people you're going to reach. You can paint this thing like you're trying to sell a message and trying to sell a story all you want, and you can get frustrated over the fact that people are not getting it. But then you also can come to a place where you're like, this is the purpose of what I'm doing. This is what I'm creating. And this is the message that I'm going to get across. It's not necessary that even if I paint it picturally and read it out for somebody that they're going to even, it's not the fact that they don't get it. It's the fact that like that people are going to care. And the reality is that in this world, and what you realize is that everybody is dealing with their own life and their own circumstances. And for them, those big or small issues in their life are big and small to them. So it's like your message that you're trying to get across, it is going to connect with the people that it's supposed to connect with.
With who it's going to connect with.
And you have to be at peace with it not connecting. And this is like something my cousin told me, who's older. And he was just like, whoever you're supposed to connect with, whatever you're supposed to make, whatever you're supposed to like achieve, it's already written. The hard thing is continuing, is you continuing. So like, I can't any longer try to create from a space. You throw this hype into yourself. Every time I get an idea that's like exciting, you'd be like, I tell my guys like, yo, we'll start a piece. You've been there.
Yeah.
We'll start a piece and be like, yo, this one's about to be fresh. And then like towards the end of it, you're like, damn, this one's like, right? But like you throw yourself that hype of like, this idea is gonna reach this, or this idea is gonna open up.
This gonna hit.
And it's like, it's the same idea of people being selling you this dream of like, you give me a painting, like I got all these people coming to my house, or I got all these people, like these people can see it. It's like, that's not how the world works.
Yeah.
Who you're supposed to meet. I met my gallerist at a coffee shop, you know, randomly. Like where you're supposed to go, good or bad, is to me predestined. The challenge is that we don't know exactly where that is, and it's up to us to have faith and to sell ourselves whatever dream or vision to continually push towards that space. Like we can set ideas and goals and this is where I'm trying to go. But to me, time, experiences,
the investment is in the practice,
changes those things.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's I really look at everything that you're doing as practice.
It is a practice.
Yeah. You're investing in your practice, and you've continued. I've watched you continue to invest in your practice, which is your process of creation.
And that's the blessing of the support that you actually get as an artist from, or being able to create art as a profession and as a livelihood, is that you're getting, to me, I look at the more money I'm able to make, or the things that I'm able to have access to, as the real benefit. Because the real benefit of that is not having more money in the bank, it's having more ability to have freedom in creation. But it still requires the same work. And that's where it's like, everything comes with a challenge. It requires the same work, because it's like Mike Tyson. Like, it's hard to get up when you're sleeping in silk sheets at 4 a.m. to go run, you know? And it's the same thing, you know? Like, if I have money to be able to pay more and more assistants, it's like, why am I going to do the labor?
Work.
But doing the labor allows you to be able to make those irregular mistakes and those things that actually
see where you need to work on.
Creativity.
Yeah, exactly. And see where you need to continue to hone and sharpen your blades. Where, you speak to, like, that's where the support helps. Being in this world, like, and just in general, like, how does gratitude for for all of that, and the gratitude for your understanding of self, the gratitude for your ability to actually be connected to the people, the gratitude for your ability to have people support you to work, where does that play a part in your world in regards to everything that you, in your process?
I mean, I think gratitude is just, it's, for me, it's just simple understanding I think when you've put that many years into something, there's the investment. And this is how I kind of associate, like, I think about love.
There we go.
Like, love is the idea of, like, to me, not the things of everything going great, but the idea of investing, struggling, fighting, going through it, learning, correcting, but continuing. Because then you see the investment, and that investment then creates value. And that value is something that you don't want to give up. I think, like,
that resonates with
my creative process, the gratitude comes in because I know what I've invested. I know what my investment then has paid off, in a sense, or however you want to look at it, in a sense of how my investment has worked.
What it's reached. So it's
and what it's reached. And I know that the doors that it's opened up. So, like, my gratitude isn't from a space of trying to be grateful to the outside. It's more so being grateful to myself and to what now I have access to. And I think my gratitude shows up in me continuing to show up.
So your gratitude is really in what you were willing to give yourself.
No, my gratitude is me willing to continue to show up.
Yeah.
Like me willing to continue to search, understanding that I haven't arrived, understanding that I haven't, like, I may have done cool things, but have I done great things, or have I fulfilled my purpose?
Yeah, that's what I mean in the sense of what you're willing to give yourself. You're willing to give yourself the continuing to show up, to continue, you know what I mean? Like that you're still allowing yourself to be in that space. It's you're grateful for, it's like you're grateful for believing in yourself, but you're grateful that you're continuing to believe in yourself, to show up, to trust yourself, to show up, to not become disconnected. There's a gratitude in your ability to stay in it, because your process has created a lifestyle. Let's say your perspective created your process. Your process created a lifestyle, and then that lifestyle is continuing to reinforce. It has the ability to reinforce your process and your perspective. You know what I mean? Your perspective that's going to reinforce your process, and you're continuing to stay in it, and you're like in this cycle. And I said it resonates with me because it's like you do know how to create something. You know what it takes, and this is why I can understand the labor-intensive aspect. It's like our frame of reference for really dope things that resonate with us, we're all built from work. So it's like, so you work. You want to make something beautiful, you work. And that comes with pain, that comes with, you know what I mean, whatever it may be. So I also resonate in regards to like the love aspect, because it's like everything we've created is, it's love. Like what we're really creating is really just love. What we're trying to create, whether it is through emotion, whether it is through a piece, it's really just love. You're trying to express a form of love. And if for us, our frame of reference is like, yo, love takes work. And it becomes like a therapy session. I don't know if this is, like, I don't know, you know, it's not even a matter of like healthy, unhealthy, but I just think that it's a very honest representation of how we see. It's like, because it's how we've developed ourselves through work and how, you know what I mean? And I think then we take on and we're able to add certain things to ourselves in regards to how we see what we want to, you know, continue to be. And it's like, you know, sometimes it's like, yo, I don't want to be through, I'm in a space right now. It's like, yo, I don't want to feel. Like, I remember, like, for me, I got tired of not feeling good. And I was like, yo, I actually want to, like, I'm tired of that. Like, you get used to not feeling good. And that's part of your process. Like, yeah. It's like,
well, you become comfortable in your uncomfortableness.
Yeah. And it's there's a difference.
That can be positive and negative.
Yeah, that's what I said. There's a difference in that. It's like, yeah, listen, I have my shoulders, and we talk about like my body. I've done real damage to my body structurally and stuff like that, because it was able to give me, it was able to continue to allow me to work and stuff like that. But now I gotta be mindful of all that, because I'm not just in a space where it's like, I'm just gonna do even with more damage, because I don't really want to do that space. Now, in the same breath, I have to figure out how that works in regards to friction, because I do need a certain amount of friction. I do need a certain amount of, you know, not only say struggle, but pushback in regards to growth, because how do we continue to, you know, create? And I still desire to grow as an individual. So I have to put myself in spaces of unknown. I have to be honest in regards to like moments of where my insecurities play out and what I want to do with that. Like, I think all those things are, like you said, doubt, all that stuff is really, it's a beautiful thing. It's what you do with it. It's really, that's where it's like, oh, what am I going to do with this? You know, whether it be a fear, whether it be an insecurity, whether it be a doubt. It's like, all right, how can I transform? My thing is like, how can I transform this in regards to what I really actually want to actualize? Because it's just energy to me. And if it's an energy in space to a, like, doubt is the same energy. It's just as heavy as it is confidence. You know what I mean? The density of the energy is just on a different frequency. So how do I take that, like, do some alchemy work, take that doubt and just make it into confidence when then it becomes real, you know? And that takes work. What, for me, my reference for that is do the work. Because if I'm doubting something, I'm doubting my capability. Mm-hmm. And for me, how do I change my doubt and capability, become familiar with something, which takes work. Step into that space, repetition, practice, learning, whatever it may be. So yeah, I understand that, because I really do think that really all we're trying to create is just love, man. Like, we're really just trying to create a perspective of love, a perspective of connection where we feel somebody might be disconnected, a perspective of someone being seen that we might feel is unseen, because I think that allows us to be true to that's how you're true to self, when you can really be honest around, yo, what do I value? You can't, like, for me, it's like, yo, you can't be true to yourself if you don't know what self is. And what that is just like, yo, what do I value? You know, values, priorities, what do you want? Like, it's like, tell me what you want. We'll build that. Like, that's, you know, but a lot of people, I think, overall, because, you know, of circumstances, it's like, yo, they're unable to really tell, like, what do you want? What do you want to build? What role does, like, truth and honesty play with you right now in regards to your world, more than your work, but more like just the world and how you're moving right now for yourself?
I think there was a lot of things in my life, and probably still some things, that I lived in a space of untruthfulness and honesty, and not so much of a space of like wanting to be deceitful, but more so not always owning up to the repercussions of experiences.
Yeah.
And not allowing yourself grace to allow those things to be okay.
Sure.
And I think that over the last couple of years, I'm learning how to, as an individual, be more honest and truthful with myself about a lot of things, and then is slowly allowing me to be more communicative to the outside with a lot of those things, to anybody that I'm interacting or dealing with.
Yeah.
Because I think that, you know, I think about like life. I think about like my father, who was definitely like an amazing creative. He was. Or maybe that was also the illusion that of my minimal amount of experiences with him. But he was a creative in a sense that, like, I know where my creativity comes from. His whole side of the family are creatives, are all artisans.
Yeah, you guys.
So
are
it's
the
in the blood. But my father was also an alcoholic. He was not there. He was absent. He was not around. He didn't keep his word. None of that stuff, which was all to me result of a lot of things that he didn't deal with, that he probably experienced that were out of his control as a young person in the South. And I used to always tell myself, you know, as a kid, like so many things that, and this is always, I think about even the music of why like, because I didn't consciously stop listening to jazz. It just happened where like I stopped really having any desire to listen. I love jazz.
Yeah.
And I understand the beauty of that jazz era, but I very rarely turn it on.
Does it trigger something?
I don't think it triggers something. I think it just, I don't know what it is. I don't know exactly what it is, but I used to tell myself, you know, so many things that like, there's no way I'm going to end up in any of these situations or be any of these type of characteristics. And you start to realize as a man and as you get older, how these characteristics travel from one person to another. So there's a lot of things within me that I'm conscious over, that I'm trying to change or correct, that are negative things that I also know existed fully within my father.
Yeah.
And one of those things is definitely being like honest and truthful with myself and to others. And it's not really a matter of like outright lying. It's a matter of being comfortable with who you really are and where you're at, you know, and being able to, like, it's, again, here's another Netic thing. Like, in Netic and you taught me this. And this was an interesting thing from when I first met you. You know, when I first met you guys, one thing that you guys definitely just showed me in the sense of the way you guys interacted is that you guys just didn't care. Obviously, Netic just didn't care at all. Like, he would say what was on his mind, and that's just what it is, whether people agreed, especially when it came to, like, women and stuff like that. Like, people would be pissed off of him, but, like, he just said what he wanted to say, and, like, they had to deal with their emotions. And I remember him saying, and probably in conversation even with you, even in any of our arguments and stuff like that, it's always like, why would I spare my feelings for you to feel comfortable if it's a way that I really feel, you know? And it's like, I think so much in life is that way, where we live in this culture where, like, you're willing to spare, you're willing to be uncomfortable because you're already projecting another person's reaction of your truth. And I think that is not from a space of being deceitful, but I think that is the culture where you're brought up in, and that's how you do things. Yeah. Like, so many people do that within little things, like, for instance, this coffee table, if this was mine and I was like, I wanted a drink saucer there, but, like, I barely knew you, I would be hesitant on being like, yo, put that underneath there. But it's like, now I'm pissed off, or I'm irritated about that, you know, and like that, and that water stain, instead of just saying it. And I think like we live our lives so much where we do those type of things constantly in so many type of ways that, like, it becomes our nature to kind of like spare how we really feel to others, because we're scared of how they're going to react. So anyways, I'm working on that as an individual, and I'm working on trying to also not just be truthful, but to also just understand what my truth is. Because I think, like, you live so much in this space of, like, almost as well creating a false narrative of certain aspects of who you are, you know, and 1,000%. Who am I, you know, and like, yeah. And I think being a creative and being an artist as well is like, you have the opportunity to kind of be in that space so much more, because you don't really have a boss, you know, like, you have the ability to kind of like switch things up. And you're also, this is a very interesting thing that I look at artists, is that especially artists that are successful in whatever creative platform, you're actually given so much more grace than the average human being. Meaning, like, you could be on crack, literally. And if you're good at what you do,
they will make an exception.
And like, yes, we want to get you help, but you're not pushed out. Yeah. And I think, like, you know, so as a creative, it's so much more important to try to live in your truth and all of that. But just as a human, it's definitely something like I'm trying to, like, you know, work on. And, you know, the older you get, you're more realizing, you know, it's like the older you get, you realize the more BS that you hold on to, and that you have, and that you're like trying to like trim it, deal with, you know, and be a better human.
Trim the fat, yo.
Yeah, and it's challenging.
Thank you for that, dude. We're like in the phase where I'm gonna basically, like, as phenomenal as these responses were, and you've spoke to a lot of stuff, I want to kind of give now really to speak to, and you've already done this, but I want to really give to a space where you articulate. One of the things is I give the audience an opportunity to hear the guest speak from a very confidence aspect of where do you feel like you're the wisest in your process, and you've spoke to where your wisdom plays out, but I really want you to say, because I know where it is. Like I can look at it, but when you think of like where you're the wisest, where you're sure, if you could write a book right away, and be able to speak to or teach, what do you think that you have an understanding right now in regards to self and how to actualize it that you'd feel comfortable? While you're thinking, because I have watched you develop systems on how to execute. I've watched you grow. Execution for you has been a beautiful thing in regards to watching you create in the micro execution, but also in the macro. You've been able to kind of pull yourself out of being in the work and then being able to see. I haven't witnessed there be a lag in that for the most part. I've watched you kind of, grow and develop and get even better and even tighter with it. But I really have. I've watched you from the cafe to Mexico to different series to different ideas of you saying, oh, this is idea that I'm having, and then watching that develop, to the plastic, like even that as well. I've watched you be really, and I don't want to say master it, but watched you come into it was like, yo, you are wise. Where if I had to tell anybody like, yo, create a system, like you would be the guy in regards to execution. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because I don't even know if you feel that way, but I'm letting you know how it actualizes out here from an expression aspect.
I think the wisdom will come with this answer that I give you is that I don't find any of that as wisdom. I find my ability to correct the process of how I execute things over time and to learn from the previous trial of it to then do it in a more efficient way. I think there's wisdom in that, but I think
1,000%.
that all of those executions of things are not
your wisdom is in the ability to correct.
No, I'm trying to. This is like really where my head is honestly at, is that of with myself. I started when I was 21. I'm 43 now. And when I was 21, I definitely knew that like my energy level was probably even higher, even though like I'm aggressive now. But I can know that like my aggressiveness was even at a different level.
Of course. Yeah.
My aggressiveness was probably even at a different level when I was doing the cafe, when I was doing Mexico. And it's slowly not getting slower, but I think the wisdom has come because I'm learning to do things a little bit smarter. But I don't look at that stuff as... It's a fine balance, and this I don't know how to, because I haven't fully understood a lot of it because it has to do with my own head. But being able to go the way that I go is because there's a part of me that's unwilling to deal with myself.
Word. Okay.
And I'm able to I'm able to work and produce because it's something that I've learned how to do and something that I know how to do. And I think of it like this. It's very, a lot of these, especially this Burning Man series, a lot of it has allowed me to reflect. If you're trying to figure out how to put food on your table or for your family, you ain't got time to think about your actual mental or your issues or any of those types of
surviving,
things, right?
In survival mode.
So if I continually set new projects in front of my face, if I continually set expectations for my galleries and myself of things that I'm going to execute and do, how can I ever come to a point of dealing with my actual real internal, which I find to be the most difficult thing to address and to change and to correct.
Word.
And I think that is the wisdom, the beginning part of wisdom that I'm finally coming on, of understanding that, like right now, I'm just got done resetting up this new studio and stuff like that and getting stuff going again after this kind of year and a half of kind of figuring everything out. But a big part of my conscious is not being fully consumed and occupied by my work.
By your work, yeah.
And to give myself time. Now, what I do with that time, I don't know.
Yeah, we've talked about this. I
don't know because I haven't given myself time.
This is the true unknown.
Something years of what do I enjoy?
This is
like,
really
what do I it's like people ask you this question. It's just like I always want to be like, my reaction is like, that's a stupid question, but it's like, it's not stupid, but it's like, what do you enjoy doing? And it's easy to say, well, I enjoy X, Y, and Z. But then if I'm truthful with myself, it's like, no, I enjoyed X, Y, and Z 23 years ago. But if you haven't continually done those things or enjoyed those things or took time to do those or practice those things, how could you say you enjoy those things? So like,
if you're not giving yourself the time.
And so like, that to me is the wisdom that I'm coming on. The wisdom of understanding like what I don't really know myself outside of my work. Outside of my creative thing, which is in context, yes, that is who I am. I am a creative. But at the same time, I also know, because I am getting older and stuff like that, that like it is not my own, that is not my whole life. Like,
welcome.
And that is the difficult thing of life, where you're like, yes, I could be remembered for my art and I can be remembered for all these things, and that's great. But at the same time, like, it's very interesting, it's like I'm trying to give myself more time where we're not working 8 hours a day or we're not working Saturday and Sunday. And now that I'm living in a completely new city, when we're not working on Saturday, it's like, what am I doing? Like, I can exercise only so many hours. I can do this. And it's like, what do I actually enjoy doing? And I think the simple wisdom that I'm saying that I find about myself right now is coming to an understanding that those things need time to be dealt with, to understand, not the wisdom of how I'm able to do everything. Because to me, it's like, again, my creativity is a gift, and I look at that. My ability to endure and to keep pushing as well as a gift, but also a trained muscle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Word.
So like, I'm trained in that, where like, I don't like being exhausted or tired or fatigued doesn't like, great. I'm like David Goggins in studio.
No, I feel you.
You know what I mean? Like, that stuff doesn't bother me. Like, going hard, multitasking, all those things does not faze me.
But do you still want to give that to yourself?
But it's like, I can keep going that way. And that's a realization of the wisdom you come into, of like, yo, if I just continue this, another 20 years is going to pass easy.
Yeah.
Another 10 years is going to pass easy before like that. Like, yes, I'll have created new things and new ideas, great works, whatever like that. But like these things outside of that space, what am I? What do I enjoy? What do I like? Who am I as an individual? Who am I to other people? Like, what am I to other people? Because it's not about being appeasing to other people, but it's about like, yeah, like
how do
because of that, and that's the thing that I've witnessed, and I've had a lot of people upset with me over the years for different reasons, but a lot of people upset with me because I haven't given time, right? But at the same time, it's always been forgiven when they see what I've been putting my time in.
Absolutely.
At the same time,
I've gotten that as well.
At the same time, that doesn't mean anything. It's like when I was in New York, when I first got to New York, I knew a lot of people, and then I started meeting more people. And this is before I even met you guys, but even then when I met you guys. But I would get invited all the time to everything, right? Everything, big or small. Once you flake so many times, people still love you, but they're no longer hitting you up to come out because they understand what you're doing, and they're no longer going to.
There's an understanding of what it is.
So like those things stop happening. But to me, like what that is that it shows you the value when you come to realization, and that's also wisdom, the value of connection and the ability to have community and to like be able to have people that care about you outside of this tangible thing that you're good at doing. Like, great, all that stuff is good, like you're a creator, but like the simplicity of like the community and connection that you have with individuals is still invaluable and more valuable than these things. Right. You know, so I think like, you know, wisdom wise, like I'm trying to unpack. The only wisdom that I could say I have is understanding the need and context for, as an artist, to be an extremist. So I do agree that as an artist and as a creative that's going after something, there has to be a level of extreme because you have to be willing to go at a different level than the average person. At the same time,
right now where you are as a person, it's not holding as much value for you.
Right. It holds value for literally everybody on the outside because of what I can do or provide. But like, it doesn't hold value for me anymore. And this goes as well into the idea of how does a person that's selling juice on the corner of a street have time to think about these complexities of life? But if he's no longer having to worry about those things, those stresses, now you have to deal with internal. And that's what I guess was where it's at. It's like, I'm no longer running from the landlord. I'm no longer trying to figure out how to pay my bills this month or next month or whatever like that. So now it's like, you start to think about all those things that you pushed off because you weren't. It's like, and I think that is that tricking of the mind as an artist and a creative. Like, I didn't care that my landlord in Brooklyn was like putting 3-day notices on my place, or like took my welder because I didn't pay rent for 3 months. You know, like I didn't care about those things because my mind frame, this is the same mind frame I had as a kid. Like when I used to get in trouble in school, I was a bad student. Not bad getting in trouble. I got in trouble, but not like fighting and stuff like that. I just wasn't a good academic student. But I used to always, every time I got in trouble, I remember sitting in the principal's office for whatever reason, and I always used to be like, I don't care what this teacher did. This person's not going to affect my life. Like I'm definitely going to make it. They're still going to be here. Like, you know, like my mind frame was like, this may be a setback in the moment, but like, it's not going to like affect where I'm trying to go at all. Like I'm on a mission. And I used to always carry that, whether I was showering in the kitchen sink or living, here or whatever it was.
I know I ain't looking good, but I'm about to blow up.
I don't care. Because you convince yourself.
Word up.
So when you're no longer in that space,
yeah,
then you start to think about all these things that you pushed away. And that is to me, it's such a pros and cons of being somebody that is driven, because you have the ability to suppress. I've become a master suppressor of so many things, whether they're emotions or their feelings or their needs. You suppress it because you're I can't entertain this feeling
at the expense of
where I'm trying to go, because once I go there, I can then kind of maybe then I'm going to be able to deal with this. And then once you get to that space, you're also then dang, it's going to take mad work, because it's new. It's something new to deal with and new to kind of unpack and unfold.
I used to think
that's the only wisdom I got, honestly.
But ain't no only right there.
I don't know, that's a whole book.
It's wonderful, because how it connects to me is I think that I used to think that if I gave energy to it, it would take away from what I was doing. Mm-hmm. Because for me, it was I know myself. For me to be really great at this, I have to. And even though there were things that I was interested in, or things I wanted to address, or things I knew needed to be addressed, or wanted to give energy to, whether it be people, an idea, or whatever it may be, creativity, something else, I felt if I did that, it would take away. I wanted to be football, embody that. And I think that when we honor that, we are supported a lot of times. And we're honored in that space. I've used this, I believe, before on the podcast in regards to growing. Okay. In regards to growing linear. And in growing linear, if you think of it as a skyscraper, you start off ground level and you're oh man, I like this. I need this. Oh, you know what? I need to work on this over there, or that needs fixing, or that needs this. And as we grow, we become more disconnected from the things that we even know need to be fixed, need to be worked on, or things we even like. And at some point in time, that skyscraper, it can continue to grow, especially in particular worlds, but for athletes, it stops at some point in time. And then you have to walk all the way down, and you come down to the ground level, and you're oh shit, I don't know none of this shit no more. Because over time, everything has changed. There's been development, sub-developments. People have left. People have moved out, left the city, left the town. And you're oh, all right, who am I? Who do I even want to be? What am I even interested in? And I can't even necessarily work on the things that I wanted to work on, because so much time is spent, you know what I mean? Whatever. So I think that those are hearing you speak to that in regards to overall, you have an understanding of what it takes. But right now it's individually as a person, you don't have as much, it doesn't hold as much value. And I think that that's honest, with being honest around what you value right now. And that's why, we've had these conversations in regards to giving yourself time to actually exhale. And through that exhale, being able to say, okay, now, what does this look like? What does my world look like? What do I want it to look like? Because, and still understanding, I can make my world look like that. You know that, you know what I mean? You have that lane, and because you've become a master in that lane of how to create that space. And it'll be validated. But is that what you want? And that's really, it takes time. Nobody can answer that for you. That's the same thing with myself, so I can understand that, and how that, that plays a part in regards to everything, how you're doing it. And I appreciate you voicing and being willing to actually be honest about that's the space you're in right now. With that, I do want to ask, what are some of the things you're giving to yourself to ground yourself in that space? Even if you're not even doing it yet, what are some of the things that you would like to give yourself to ground yourself in that space? I know you run, and I know you worked out. And I said we've always connected in that. You have given yourself that, and people might not know how much a part of training and just having a consistent discipline to be able to work out helps you and is necessary for you.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm just coming off an injury, so for those looking at me, but I think through exhaustion, there's a lot of clarity. I think I just, on a simple note, I think physical activity is, I was listening to Joe Rogan today actually, and he was basically saying saying, but thinking that, a lot of depression and stuff like that can really be cured through physical exertion and physical exhaustion.
Word.
And I agree with that. I agree with the idea of exerting levels of physical energy that I don't know the science behind it, but I do know that headspace wise, it brings a level of soberness and clarity and calmness.
Sure.
And I think us as people, as creatives, as people that are doing 1,000 different things compared to what we were talking about earlier of like a Japanese craftsman that does one thing, we're continually on 10 trying to accomplish all the different things in the same moment and same time. So, for me, like running or cycling or any of those type of things, they're challenges that you also see your weakness in. They're challenges that are physical and not mental, which is, well, that's not true. It's physical. It's definitely mental as well. And I think high parts of mental. Running, swimming, cycling, long distance.
At some point, that becomes the hardest thing.
It's a mental. Yeah. It's a mental to overcome the pain. It's a mental to overcome the weakness that you feel within yourself. But I think that's no different than being a creative. Like, you're continually overcoming pain in a different way. The mental stress of doubt and unbelief and all those things. And you're overcoming it by continuing. So to me, the physical exertion and exercise, outside of what it does for you in your body, mentally, I think is what definitely allows me to stay calm and to feel better in my person day to day. And so
it helps you, with that process.
When I don't do it,
helps the other process.
Yeah, and when I don't do it, everything falls off. I'm such an extremist in certain ways where I look at myself and a lot of things don't make any sense. It's like, dang, if I'm not going to work out for these 3 months, at least eat mad healthy. You know what I mean? But it's like, for me, it goes hand in hand. It's like when I exercise, I want to eat healthy.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, dang, why would I like put this exertion in and like contaminate it?
Yeah, the process for me of awareness opens up doors of awareness in other spaces.
Right. So
when you have a process of taking care of your body, then physically, the process of taking care of your body in other doors, in other ways opens up. That door opens up to like a whole nother where you're like, oh, well, if I'm going to take care of my body in this way, then I have to take care of my body in this way. And then vice versa. It'll be like, well, and I want to prioritize my sleep. Like I don't feel good. And I know this start of me feeling good is working out.
Yeah.
And then everything else becomes around like, oh, I feel more confident in the sense of like, and I mean, working out just means like taking care of myself. The wind, you know what I mean? Like I can feel when I'm like, oh yeah, you can't even breathe, bro. Your wind is weak. Like your conditioning is trash. You know
and I think that's also what it is too, where it's like this level of real camaraderie between the community that you've set in. Because I feel like literally, if we ain't seen each other for a minute,
first thing we do
is the first things would be like, yo, you work out.
We always sizing each other.
Like, you work out yet?
Now what you doing?
Work out today? Like, I talk to my brother, it'd be the same thing. Or I talk to Israel and like, or it also puts a little like guilt.
Yeah, it's good.
When somebody's like, yeah, I just got to, like Eric sent me something the other day. It was like 7, I woke up to it like 7 o'clock in the morning. And it was like, he sent me his stats of already working out. And I'm like, gosh, I need to go do something, right? Or somebody else sent me something where I was supposed to go work out with them, run or cycle. And I flaked on them.
Oh, that's...
And they sent me the thing after they already did the thing.
Yeah.
but then it made me get up and get
and
it
actually
in.
do it. Yeah,
you know, and like, and not to make those excuses. And I think like that's
why community is
I think there's like a strong value. It's like a very positive thing that you're able to encourage people on.
Gotcha. I'm with you.
So hopefully I'll be back.
Yeah, you're getting back, boss. You be all right. Do we need?
I want to interrupt really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Just remember, so far we need to have a closing. Like.
Yeah, so I'm gonna. No, I am. I have two questions that I'm gonna close with. Well, closing in what regard?
So far in our recordings, it's just been like, all right, bet. Well, thanks for being here.
Oh no, I got you. Okay.
Recycle it and don't do two questions because Hugo also has to go, so we have to respect his
all right,
timing.
nah.
So just really just do a closing question. You don't have time for.
Well, my closing. Cool. Well, I'm with that. You've, to be honest with you, you've answered, and I actually have really. I think that myself as well, but even everyone else. I don't know if you've ever given people insight into your thought process like this overall. So I appreciate that, and I know that people will. But I do, usually the closing question that I give people is, you've told me everything you do and what you're thinking, and I think this plays into, and this might be a difficult or challenging, but it's a beautiful question because it's, I always ask everyone, who are you? And right now, Hugo McCloud, who are you?
I wish I had a better vocabulary sometimes, but I feel like sometimes the basic words are
that
the easiest. But I feel like I'm a searcher. I'm a searcher because I think it's my way of dealing with experiences, traumas. I think it's my way of dealing with time. I don't know. I would have to probably be asked questions back of what I mean so that I could actually understand my thoughts. But like my feeling is like, yeah, I'm a creator, I'm a maker, all those type of things. But I think more than any of that, it's like there's part of me that doesn't care about any of that stuff either. Like I care about creating, but it's really just who I am and how I just take things and put them together. Because I think it's also my love language. Because I do think that creating isn't really a space. It's not something that I'm trying to do for myself. And I think like I'm trying to do it because I think it also provides a level of peace for others. I love to cook. You cook. I like to cook for myself, but like I like to cook for other people, and I think like cooking, you're creating something that somebody else is enjoying. And I think like all these things are searching, whether it's searching for connection or it's searching for ideas or it's searching for peace of understanding of why this or that happened. Or you're searching for answers just for yourself of like, because you don't understand. Like you don't understand certain things about life and about this world that we live in and why certain things go down the way they go down. And so you're searching and you find these different avenues and these different things to search through. And I think like creating and making things with my hands and exercising and how far can I push myself and all these different building and having these kind of like lofty dreams, even a sense of like what we did in Mexico and all these things that are kind of like going against the grain, going like a salmon, going upstream. Like I look at everything that I've done in my life that has kind of been kind of like that, dropping out of school and pursuing design, not knowing anything and doing that, and then moving to New York, not really, knowing anything about that, and then trying to do all these things, moving to a different country, and, like all these different things, and then coming to LA, and like all these things are searching. And I think like that's as well what creativity is for me, is that it's like I don't know where I'm going to be creative wise or what I'm trying to go after. I can't say. I can say right now, like where my head is at creatively, and it's in this vein and in this idea and with this material and all these things. But I can't look at any of them and be like, this is it. Like, this is, I've arrived. I look at all of it as a space of like, there's excitement, there's creativity, there's drive, there's direction in this, but I can't look at any of it and be like, this is it. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I think like the word that best describes me of how I look at myself is I'm a searcher. And a searcher of one that also realizes that maybe I'll never know what that is. But I feel like maybe that's also then the answer.
Yep.
Where it's like, that's just the thing that allows you to continue to push.
Yeah. I'm going to simplify all that for you.
Please.
It's just love, homie.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it all is love.
And I think that I've always told people, you can feel the love in Hugo's art, in how you express. And I know in people's not being able to somewhat connect to you as an individual. I'm like, and I get that. And I was like, and I understand. I'm fortunate, and me and bro were fortunate to be able to connect with you because it was similar in ways. It was like, yeah, we do have some of the same love languages. We, you know, whether it be an expression and you're the artist form of us. That's what we used to say. And I was the physical like form of us. You know what I mean? And from an intellectual aspect, bro was that of us. But we all used to say, it's like the three of us used to be like, oh yeah, we're the same in many aspects, we're like the Trinity. And how we saw that was, it was like, it was easy to be able to speak on your behalf of what you're, it's like, it's love. Like he's trying to, it's like, I know people are like, oh, he doesn't, I'm like, look at his art. You can't tell me that he's not able to, it's like, because his art is so beautiful in a space that it's like, oh my goodness. And then in the same breath of, you know, you talk about searching, I this is why we do what we do. We travel, we see, it's like, because we're searching for, and what I believe we're searching for, honestly, is love. And I don't know how to, you know, for a host of things. And how it expresses itself, yeah, I don't know. It's just part of the process, and I think that's part of who we are and everything like that. But I really do think that it's simplified. It's really just the love aspect, you know what I mean, that we're looking for. And when we find a place of, I have an idea of certain things that I think will help that search, you know, I do think that, because I will say that on my search, there are certain things that I was like, oh, where it allowed me to come back home, you know, from the search, but then still got to go out and search again, you know what I mean, stuff like that. So but I totally understand, and I hope that you know, I do think the audience will be able to pull what they can from that, because it is you know, it's a very real thing. That was actually I think the realest answer that I've heard anybody say in regards to all this. So with that, is there anything else?
Please thank Hugo for coming.
Well, of course, yeah. I was gonna.
And then something around like, I got a lot of value from hearing what you
Well, yeah, you do. You already know, man. I want to thank you. We have conversations, and we've definitely built, you know, and had more brotherly and like family conversations about like what we want to do and stuff like that. But this is I think the first where we've introspectively just sat, you know what I mean? The whole conversation has just been certified like introspection. So I thank you for this. I thank you for being willing to support and be a part of this and what I'm creating, because, you know, it's a lot, and I know I've been in this and giving energy to this. So thank you for that, because that's for real, sure. Especially with what you got going on. And thank you to the people, because I know they're going to appreciate this. People love. They will, dude.
Well, who knows? I don't hope so. I mean,
look at you being in your mind.
I mean, half the stuff I said couldn't make any sense.
Nah, but listen, you know how many people hit me and are like, "Yo, when you gonna do Hugo?" Because you really are, dude. You're an enigma for many people, and you're a mystery.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? Like I love that, and I think it's a very beautiful thing. But I think that even in the people that you're not a mystery to, this holistically shows. And I think you're in a space now where the holistic has more value. Mm-hmm. It holds a little bit more value with you. You know what I mean? I think that that's maturity, that's growth, and I think we're all it resonates with me as well. So I thank you, dude, and this will be dope, just because you're dope. You've always been dope. I've seen it forever.
Well, it's destiny.
Yeah,
we're destined.
Destined. So you know, I will forever search with you, bro, and I make that promise.
Me too.
I got you, boss. So with that, appreciate for tuning in to Profits and Process with Hugo McCloud.